All right, so in this video, I'm going to have an alternative conversation about anxiety, depression, and things like ADHD. The format's going to be kind of in my normal sort of rant, angry, vulgar, rant-oriented video, which I did last year about why I felt angry and depressed. And then I did another one on why I don't really trust people, and I've done a few others along the same lines. So those will probably be linked next to the video. But I want to do something that would be helpful and shed some insight on these huge subjects like depression, like anxiety, like ADHD, because every day more and more people are dealing with it. Every day more and more people are being diagnosed or put on drugs. And more importantly, more and more people are thinking that there's really something wrong with them and that in some way they're just broken or stained or need to be fixed in some way. So I'm also going to share with you my own experience because, in case you can't tell, I have a little bit of dark circles, but I used to have a lot more, and that's indicative of some kidney cheese stagnation as relating to these different emotions like depression, anxiety. These are things that I've experienced and felt quite intimately throughout the course of my 30 plus years on the planet. And it's also something that I believe the mainstream world really doesn't understand, meaning pharmaceutical industry, psychotherapy, psychiatry. And then flip side, the alternative world, the spiritual world, the self-help world, they don't really understand it either. And they're both operating from the same basic assumptions and are both leading people basically down the same dead end. Because there's a real agenda in our world in both of these supposedly different worlds, meaning mainstream and then sort of alternative. There's this real agenda towards kind of zombifying us and making us stupid and making us less engaged with life, less active, less who we are, less actually experiencing a diversity of emotion and feeling and sensation and experience. And a real agenda to dull our critical and sort of judgmental thought capacities. So we just kind of become just sort of passive, accepting, sort of half-wit kind of humans. Whether that's achieved through drugs and poor lifestyle and health and sort of abuse, or it's achieved on the flip side with the obsession with purity, the obsession with light, the obsession with love, the obsession with trying to just open your heart chakra and come from your heart chakra and be in your heart space and have good vibes and only be nice and only be compassionate. And really, these things might appear different. They might appear different to a child, but if we actually take it past the surface and look at their basic assumption, the basic mechanics that underlie it, see they're fundamentally the same and fundamentally make us pretty stupid and still tell us that, well, what you're feeling is bad, and here is just what you need to do to fix it, whether it's this drug or this positive thinking or this yoga pose or this meditation, whatever, or this, positive affirmation, then, here you go. Now, to be clear and transparent, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of these approaches or practices or disciplines, because I think that's also kind of stupid. Because there are times perhaps when a person taking a drug might be really helpful. A person doing positive affirmations or doing things which I just kind of made fun of and said were silly, there's a time when that could be actually helpful. And perhaps it could be a useful learning experience for that person to go through. And for me, I've gone through all of these things and realized that really, yeah, they kind of do some little bit good, but they actually miss a whole huge piece of really what's actually going on. And that's really what I want to get into right now. And that is sometimes it's actually more helpful to be negative. It's more helpful to be critical. It's more helpful to be judgmental. It's more helpful to be mean. It's more helpful to embrace this bullshit that we're trying to get away from rather than trying to get away from it. Because, for example, let's say you have anxiety, you have depression, you have ADHD, you have these experiences. And basically everything is telling you that it's just this independent thing, and somehow you're this other independent thing but you're experiencing this thing, but you need this other independent third party to come in and tell you what's wrong and tell you what's going on and tell you how to fix it, or give you this magical elixir substance that's going to somehow treat this thing, which is you, but it's also not you, it's also bigger than you, it's also separate than you, it's also controlling you, but then you're somehow caught up in it. And it just gets to be this really weird, schizophrenic, psychotic thing where it's like, well, mentally I think this, but emotionally I feel that, but spiritually I think this, but physically I know this, but intuitively I know that. And it's like, who the fuck are you? Like, how do you, no wonder you have anxiety, no wonder you feel like shit. Your whole idea of relating to yourself in the world is fucking insane. It's ridiculous, it's schizophrenic, it's psychotic, it's all these different things. Well, I'm this, well, I'm that, but I'm this, but I'm that, but I'm higher, but I'm lower, I'm gonna be better, I'm gonna be worse, I'm gonna elevate this over that. Da, 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 da. Jesus, it's fucking exhausting. Like, have you ever checked in with your basic life experience and seen that it's actually one continuous stream? Sometimes you might label things spiritual or label them emotional, or label them feelings or whatever, but it's all the same. And that whole interpretation is actually illusory and made up. So anyways, getting back to the point, perhaps, for example, how it could be useful to be more critical and judgmental or negative is, instead of saying, oh, well, I just have depression and it sucks and woe is me and I hate my job and I'm just looking for the right thing to take and I'm doing all this. What about be a fucking asshole? What about just give yourself permission to be fucking critical, judgmental, arrogant piece of shit and say, well, I'm going to look at myself and say, well, how am I creating these situations? Meaning, if I feel depressed, maybe I'm actually repressing who I actually am, or I'm engaging in behaviors and activities that really have nothing to do with what I want to do or who I am as a person. So this is a way of my body telling me, hey, dumbass, like, maybe do something different. Maybe, like, not be such a pushover. Maybe not be such a pussy. Maybe not be so fucking spineless. And realize that, hey, sure I feel horrible and sure these feelings are very much weighing me down. But perhaps I could examine, well, am I letting this be done to me? Meaning, am I engaging in relationships with poor boundaries? Do I even know what boundaries are? Do I even have boundaries? Do I even see the difference? Do I even know what that means? Am I allowing myself to be a doormat for other people? Am I allowing myself to be a pushover? Am I basically allowing all these things into my life that I know at my core are disharmonious and are not really what I give a shit about at all? And then looking at anxiety, we could say, well, am I actually just really fucking stupid and arrogant? Meaning so stupid and arrogant to think that these crazy thoughts that I make up or I have in my head are actually really what's going on in the world, or actually really what's happening in the world, or that anyone actually gives a shit about these things at all. Because largely no one does unless you're paying them, which is indicative of how mostly untrue and irrelevant they actually are. And then looking at ADHD, or inability to focus, it's often an inability to focus on things that are fucking pointless. Like for me, I can be, an ADD or inability to focus, but I can also be like OCD. Like there's so many times in my life where I could be, lazy or procrastinating. My parents, even as a kid, as a teenager, and even as an adult, would always tease me about being a procrastinator, being lazy, or putting things off. But it was just shit that I just hated and didn't want to do. So obviously, yeah, I would do that. But then at the same time, I got into guitar, I got into yoga and meditation, and all of a sudden, I'm doing that way too much. I'm wanting to play guitar for like 4 hours a day and meditate for like 3 hours a day and read for hours a day, doing all these things, and I'm like, oh. But at the same time, these two things exist. So, and even right now, it's the same thing. There's things in my life that I just like can't really handle and don't want to handle, and have no real capacity for. But other things totally dive in deep. Now, really, what's useful within that is understanding the framework of, okay, basically, yeah, we all are going to have to do shit we don't want to do, to a certain degree. That's just life. I mean, I don't really like having to drive in my car and sit in traffic to go to a place. I don't really like to pay taxes. I don't like to do sort of mundane things like that, but to a certain degree I have to. And that's just kind of, you know, the world we live in. But there's also a bunch of other stuff that I don't like doing that I used to do or have to do that I don't have to do anymore. I just don't do. So there's freedom that we have, which basically leads us to a framework of saying, all right, maybe I have anxiety, maybe I have depression, maybe I have this inability to focus, and to a certain degree, there's just things I can't change. You can't change other people. You can't often change external circumstances in the way you want. And maybe you can, but it takes time. You know, for example, you're in a job that you hate. Well, you can't just quit your job and start your own business tomorrow and be a successful independent entrepreneur. That takes a lot of fucking time, a lot of energy, and a lot of work. So we have to be realistic in what we're saying and realistic in understanding that, you know, we can't just medicate our feelings away or throw our thoughts away that we don't like and think that will solve the problem, because ultimately that's not really helpful. So it's basically understanding, okay, there's this thing. So what are my options? Well, I can change the way I'm relating to it, meaning actually get in touch with what my real process of reacting to it is. And then I learn over time perhaps to not really react to it, or just actually develop the capacity to see into it, see what it is, see the situation for what it is. So for example, we're in a relationship or we're in relating with people, and it might really bother us, might trigger us, might get anxious, might get depressed, might get angry or something or whatever. And then that launches us down the whole thing of, what's wrong with me? What do I got to take? What do I got to do? Blah, blah, blah. Or we could just say, well, what is this situation really? Like, what does this person really have going on? Because just in the same way that I'm self-absorbed and think it's all about me, they're just as self-absorbed and they think it's all about them. So we're not even really communicating. We're not even really talking to each other. We're just broadcasting and throwing out our emotional and mental garbage compost that just is running through our head all the time. So we say, okay, well, you know, it really bothers me that this person is controlling or whatever. But we say, well, what is their life? You know, why would they do that? What is their ecosystem? What world are they coming from? Oh, they're just doing that because of these things that they've learned and these things that they've had in their life and these experiences that they have and their belief systems that they've developed as a result. So what they're doing has nothing to do with me, so I don't need to take it personally. Boom, I don't really need to get anxious or depressed about it because I realized I don't need to change this person. I don't need to change the situation. I just maybe need to learn to investigate it and see it for what it is. Hence the value of being a bit more critical, judgmental, and arrogant enough to give yourself permission to actually ask those questions instead of trying to medicate it and cover it up with positive thinking or good vibes or acceptance or compassion or all those things, because all those things are actually bullshit unless you're actually willing to understand things as they are, because otherwise you can't really relate authentically or appropriately or naturally. Thus, you can't really have compassion because you haven't actually had the compassion enough to see outside your own bullshit story, to see what's going on in a real situation that has very little to do with you. Because getting caught up in compassion and positive thinking and all the love and light shit is just as selfish as the negative things which we're trying to be medicating. So it kind of doesn't work, and it's just more self-deception, which is only going to lead to frustration and more depression and more anxiety and more ADHD and more things that we are trying to get away from. So it might be more beneficial to learn to think more clearly and accurately and get in touch with what's actually real than just trying to deny it and cover it up with medication, whether medication is a whole spectrum of things from, you know, allopathic mainstream to all the way to new agey kind of things. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. They all have their purpose and place. It's just, unless we're actually getting in touch with the real dynamic and engaging with life, then we're still just kind of somewhat zombified. So getting back to our point, we have the ability to not change the situation, probably, or change the other person, but say, okay, well, how can I change the way I'm relating to it, thus seeing into it perhaps more authentically? So we have that option. We also have the option to change the situation. We have the option to end the relationship or quit the job or move to a new place or set a healthier boundary or quit doing the thing, which is maybe we're drinking 12 Coca-Colas a day and it makes us feel horrible. then perhaps, yeah, okay, we can have the ability to not do that. So we can change that aspect of the external world. So we can basically change the way we're relating to it. We can change the external thing, or we can perhaps eliminate it altogether, which is kind of along the lines of changing it. And then the flip side of eliminating it is just minimizing it. Meaning, okay, I realize I'm going to have to do this thing, but how can I minimize it so I don't have to do it as much, or it's a lot more, it's a lot easier. And then the other option, which might not be as accessible for certain people, is to delegate it. Meaning, I fucking hate this, and I'm no good at it, so how can I find someone else that likes it and is good at it? And either trade them something, or give them something, or give them money, whatever that might be, but just having that as an option. And it might be a friend, it might be an accountant, who knows what it could be, but just giving ourselves that degree of power and independence at whatever scale or level we're able to approach it. Because I think ideally we all would love to have everything taken care of, and we just have 100% free time to do what we want. And I can tell you from experience that sounds great, but it's actually can be really fucking stressful and really a huge pain in the ass, especially if you have pre-existing anxiety and depression, because it just carries over, and now you don't have any distractions. Now you don't have anyone to blame. You don't have any excuses. You only have yourself to blame for why you mismanage your time and energy, or don't do the things that you feel like you should be doing. So in some ways it's better, in some ways it's worse, because you just can blame yourself more. So those are some options that we have based on those things. And I think it's really helpful to get in touch with those and re-examine them consistently and realize that it took us perhaps X amount of years to develop these habitual tendencies. And it's not necessarily always going to happen overnight, although that it can, though often it's usually a process of shedding piece by piece and step by step by step. But really, if we're feeling depressed or feeling anxious, it's telling us something is off. So it's perhaps relevant to get in touch with what that actually is, rather than trying to just cover it up or medicate it as if it's this thing which has nothing to do with our real experience. And perhaps our real issue is that we're just not even engaged. And this leads me to my next big point, is that both sides of the coin, allopathic and alternative, basically tell us that our thoughts and feelings are really important, that they really have this deep meaning and this deep substance, and we just need to investigate it and understand it and nurture it and love it and be kind to it and do all these things, or just fucking repress it and cover it up and get on drugs and zombify it. It's two sides of the same coin, really. But the issue is that both of those paradigms are coming from the same axioms, they're coming from the same assumptions, the same unproven things about reality, meaning we have a real permanent abiding sense of self, which we don't, and that we are somehow separate, independent from reality, which we aren't, and that somehow caught up in this, there's just this independent I, which there isn't. And that's also getting into the scientific method, which assumes there's this thing called objectivity, which is somehow possible in this physical world, which it isn't. So it's all these ridiculous assumptions, which then you take that and you layer on either religiousness or secular religiousness through psychotherapy, which says, well, okay, here's the hierarchy, here's the good feelings, here's the bad feelings, here's the things you want to cultivate, here's the things you want to get rid of, here's the things that are going to get you to heaven, here's the things that are going to get you to hell. So here's your pyramid, here's your false hierarchy, here's your ridiculous dichotomy maze to run around for the rest of your life. Have fun with it. We'll see you when you die, or we'll see you when you get sick and you need salvation, or you need to pay us money to save you from the bullshit that we created for you. Have fun. So we could say, okay, well, maybe those things are actually incorrect, and that's why we're arriving at the situation. That's why these two supposedly alternative things are actually the same, and actually tend to lead people towards the same results. Which leads me to my point, which is basically that our thoughts and feelings are pretty fucking irrelevant. Really don't mean that much. they really have not much reality or weight to them. And I'll let that sit in for a second. And I don't mean that in kind of like a nihilistic, sort of apathetic, like pseudo spirituality way. Where it's like, oh, it's all empty, it's all meaningless, bro. It doesn't matter. Just ignore it. It doesn't matter. Because that's coming from apathy and depression and ignorance as well. Because if it truly doesn't matter and is truly irrelevant, then you don't really need to have a positive or negative opinion about it. You don't really need to put it down. You don't really need to put it up. It's kind of like a fart or a burp. I mean, those can be funny, I guess, based on your culture, but they really have no meaning. We understand that they're just natural byproducts of just digestion. You eat food, then what happens? You're going to take a shit, hopefully, or you're going to pee. And that's just what's going to happen. That's the process of being alive. That's what we characterize as something being alive, this process of transformation of one thing into the other fucking endlessly. That's called life. And if you don't have that, that's called death. So what people are doing is, I'm this living, dynamic, breathing thing, but I want to be more like a dead person. I want to be static. I want to be fixed. I just want to be happy all the time. I just want to be enlightened all the time. I just want to be all light. I just want to be this one little thing all the time. That's it. I just don't want to be a living, dynamic, actual person that's actually engaged with reality, because these things are bad and I can't do them. So that means only these things are good and those are only the things I can do. It doesn't make any sense at all, does it? No, not really. So our thoughts and feelings most of the time are just byproducts of life, which by the time we are even aware of them, it's just like the wake of a ship, the echo after the ship's already gone. We're way back here. We're studying the waves. The ship's fucking way gone. Reality and life itself, the process is way on to something else by the time we're back here. Oh, wait. What that person said, it really hurt my feelings. Well, wait. But really, everything else has moved on, and we're going to get there. We're going to stay stuck in that place of ignorance for 20 years, 30 years, our whole life. Well, what they said was mean, and it hurt my feelings. And, well, they were a white person, so all white people are stupid. Well, they were a man, so I hate men now. Or they were an atheist, so I fucking hate atheists. We develop these ridiculous distortions about reality. And that is our life. Something happens when we're a little kid, and we just assume that's happening forever. Or something happened last week, and we're hanging on to it now. When in reality, no one cares. You don't even really care. That's the funny thing is, in reality, you don't really give a shit. But for some reason, you feel like you ought to, or you feel like it's important that you must, or that you're going to gain something. That's usually the main thing, is you're going to gain something from holding on to this thing. But in reality, the funny part is that you don't care. Ultimately, we all know this. Ultimately, we all have this at our core, and we realize, I don't fucking care. This is stupid. This is irrelevant. But we still get caught up in it all the time. Which is also kind of funny. So getting back to the point, what happens is we take this natural, spontaneous thing, which is our feeling experience to life. And the whole idea that there's a division between thinking and feeling is stupid. The whole idea that you can have some feelings but not others, is some, be emotional but not, is stupid. Because every decision we make is an emotional decision. You walk into a room, your awareness scans quickly and instantly. Are there any threats? Is anyone going to kill me? Is this a good group? Am I safe? Within a split second, you've already made that, and it's a feeling response. Where am I going to sit? Ooh, that chair looks cool. I want to sit next to that person. We're having this basic feeling response. And then that's happened, and it's happening, and it's already done. And then our mind says, oh, well, that could be really good. If I sit next to that person, they're cool. So that's going to make things better for me in the future. But I'm going to sit in this place by these people, and that's going to make me seem like this kind of person. I think that's the kind of person I am, so I'm going to do that. Yeah. And then you spend the rest of the day feeling great about yourself because you just proved some ridiculous stupidity to yourself, and that's going to fuel your day, and then you're going to tell that story to all your friends. You're going to carry it on, and the next day you're going to wake up feeling great because you proved some stupidity yourself. But in reality, it doesn't. It's irrelevant completely. It doesn't really matter. So what happens is we have this natural, this ocean, this natural spontaneous response to life, which is our feeling quality, which is sometimes here, sometimes there, here, there. It's, who knows what it's going to do. And I guess also on that point, I want to point out what I'm talking about is not like self-indulgent sort of crazy emotionality, because that's also thinking that it has some importance. Because what happens is people hear this kind of information, and I know a lot of people like this personally, and they just explode their emotions out, and I exaggerate everything out and think it's everyone's responsibility to care or to be responsible for it, when it's really not the case. Because it means you haven't really understood what I'm really talking about. Because if it's irrelevant, again, you don't really need to go to either extreme. You just can let it be its natural thing. Which, yeah, if you need to freak the fuck out and go crazy, it's what you need to do. But it has nothing to do with other people. It has nothing to do with them needing to fix it or save it or improve it or be responsible for it or even have to necessarily deal with it. It's your shit. It's your experience. Just like if you got to take a shit, you don't invite all your friends into the bathroom and say, hey man, come hang out with me. It's going to be a good one. I can feel it. Like, let's all just hang out and you need to deal with this. Everyone's like, fuck that, dude. I don't care. That's disgusting. Like, everyone does this. Everyone has this experience. It's not important. It's not special. It's not anything. It just is a natural function of life. So leave me the fuck alone. I'm going to go do something else. So that's really what happens in the issues. Or the other flip side is we not need to, impress it. So getting back to my point, what happens is we have the spontaneous thing. Life, feeling, quality, experience. Then we have our thoughts, which are most of the time also just popping up, doing their thing. We take them, we tie them in a knot, and we think, oh yeah, this makes sense. This interpretation is really what that feeling meant, and this feeling is really what that thought is about. So I'm going to tie them in a knot. I'm going to throw on some of my biases and preferences, and some ways in which I feel insecure that I need to elevate myself. And that's just who I am, taking my thoughts and my feelings, which are generally spontaneous processes, tying them in a knot, attaching my identity to it, and then striving and struggling for the rest of my life, trying to defend and prove that illusion to everyone else, the illusion married to a futility, basically. As I'm going to convince myself that it's really where I'm going to convince everyone else, and then all of a sudden, I feel anxious, I feel depressed, I feel all these negative things. Well, I wonder why. I feel tired. I wonder why. I don't have any energy. Where did it all go? It's not that you don't have energy, because you're alive. If you didn't have energy, you'd be dead. Because what distinguishes life versus death is movement, is transformation, is energy, if you want to call it that, or the flow of information. So that's a huge thing that people get really caught up in, is that these things have so much meaning. And that's not to say that they don't ever have meaning, because there is a place to say like, well, alright, I was in this situation, I felt really pissed off. What's really going on here? So, well, I think, boom, then maybe you'll get some kind of insight and realize like, oh yeah, dude, you're just trying to like change the situation or trying to think that people need to be some other different way, or you think it's about you when it isn't, or some other sort of tangent which has nothing to do with reality, but you're choosing to invest in it. It's making you feel like shit. So there's value in actually doing some investigation. Because again, if it's really relevant, if it's really not that important, then you don't really have to go to either extreme. But you can go to either extreme if and when it's necessary and or appropriate. And how you distinguish and understand these things is not mentally. It's through your actual intelligence. It's through actually being engaged. Through feeling out what is the correct and appropriate response to whatever situation you find yourself in or whatever comes up in your present whatever reality. Because when we're layering on all these external rules and regulations and dogmas and shoulds and shouldn'ts and musts and mustn'ts, we're really actually pushing away our ability to be engaged with life, our ability to actually naturally respond, our natural response capacity isn't contingent upon any paradigm, any religion, any spiritual tradition, any of that stuff whatsoever. Our natural response, feeling quality to life, our natural countenance is part of being alive. If we didn't have it, we wouldn't be alive. So we don't necessarily have to do something to attain it. It's more so what we ought to do is remove the things that we're doing that are undermining that all the time. Meaning I could say our body's natural state is health. Our body's natural state is harmony. Yes, but if we're doing 300 things a day to consistently undermine that, then we have to perhaps be like, well, maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I'm ignorant. Maybe I don't really know what I'm talking about or what I'm doing. So we can work ourselves back through all of the minutia and the drudgery and monotony and illusion that we've consistently created for ourselves and are still creating for ourselves all the time, and arrive back at a place of actually being more engaged and being in touch with who we actually are. Which leads me to my next point, which is that the false idea that we all should be happy, or there's a certain way that we all should be, which is total garbage and is actually largely why we're in the situation in the first place. Because people want to talk about positive thinking or being about the light or being about good vibes or heart-centered and all this sort of malarkey and fucking slogans, which is nothing wrong with it. They all have their place, obviously. But the problem is that if you're really angry, then how positive is it to cover up your anger with something else? Like if you're genuinely a critical, kind of judgmental person, is it really positive to cover that up with, oh, I'm just all about compassion and love and light. You know, I just accept everyone. I accept everything. I open my heart center and to the divine flow. I give my life over to God and to Jesus. Is that really that positive? If you're basically taking who and what you are, your natural functions, your natural capacities, your natural gifts that supposedly that God or that creator or that universe bestowed upon you, you're saying, you know what, fuck all those gifts, fuck all those natural capacities. I'm just going to give it all over and give it all up and give it all away, and I don't need it because that's going to get me in better grace or better position with this thing that gave me the stuff. When in reality, how positive is that really? When if that life or that process or that being, whatever you believe, gave you these natural capacities, wouldn't the most respectful thing you could do is cultivate those and sharpen and refine those natural capacities to the absolute greatest or most efficient or most creative expression of those things, rather than thinking if you become a zombie that'll somehow be better. It doesn't make any sense at all, because it doesn't matter what it is. It's going to have a positive and a kind of a negative side. It's going to have a use and a misuse, whether that's love and compassion, which is awesome, but it can also be really harmful, because sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is nothing. Sometimes the most compassionate, nice thing you can do is be mean. But if you don't have the intelligence because you're blinded by a dogma, you're not going to know that. So you're going to do the wrong thing at the wrong time. So it's going to probably cause more harm to yourself and the other person than if you actually were in touch with the real feeling quality. Likewise, if you are actually depressed, if you are actually anxious, if you do actually have these supposedly negative things, then perhaps it could be better to just feel them. And just realize that they'll have their natural course. They'll play out. Now, it's not to say you allow yourself to go to deep, dark places and really harm yourself or harm other people. It's not okay. But to say that, okay, I'm angry. Well, I'm gonna let myself be angry. I'm gonna find a way to just fucking do what I gotta do. And then eventually we can probably arrive at a place of being like, man, this is fucking stupid. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And then you realize, this is why I'm doing it. Oh, well, I don't have to. It's stupid. And then you're like, oh, I just don't care about that anymore. But it's a natural process. It's not something you forced or coerced. It's kind of like digestion of food. You can't really force it. It's sort of just happens when it happens, and you're just kind of like, oh, all right, well, all right, it's done. And I know that can be hard or tricky to kind of get our head around, and it's honestly just a little bit uncomfortable to say publicly because I don't really know who's watching and what situation they're in. And some people, yeah, they need to let their stuff play out. Some people don't, because it's hard to really tell who's who and what's what. But hopefully you can kind of garner what I'm saying based on the idea and how it's not really useful to lie to yourself. It's not positive to lie to yourself and to lie to other people. That's actually the opposite of positive because you're lying, you're deceiving, you're repressing, you're manipulating. That's not positive. That's not love. That's not light. That's not compassion. That's not good vibes. None of those things that they're supposed to be about. Yeah. So for example, to put it on like a positive note, in my own life, or I guess it's not a positive note, a personal note, in my own life, I've had phases of depression and anger and whatever, anxiety, and still have those things to some degree at present moment. But it's also realizing that those were necessary. Those were processes of burning things off. Those are stages of healing things. And even till this present moment time, I still feel angry. I still sometimes get a bit depressed. Not as much as I used to, but it's just different now because I don't care. I just notice them I don't know, whatever. So what I mean by not caring is basically just choosing to not layer another layer of, guilt, shame, or blame on top of whatever feeling that we're having. Meaning not being angry about being angry or being depressed about being depressed, or basically just feeling that we should be some other kind of way. Because doing that is, again, just based on more ignorance and stupidity, not really based on engaging or being present in any way or actually being in touch with what's actually going on for us. So the next real point that I want to make before I end and wrap this video up is just kind of illustrate specifically how both sort of approaches will not really be helpful for a specific person in a specific situation, just so you can see kind of what I'm talking about. And the example I'll give you is basically kind of a person who's had really low self-esteem their whole life, which manifests as, kind of always having to be the victim or the martyr for other people, meaning they always have to be the caretaker or the savior or the, to fix it and solve everyone's problems, or, the super oversensitive person that's just always giving and trying to do things for other people, which is insanely common. It's often more common with women, from what I've seen, but at the same time, I've also met plenty of dudes that do the same thing as well. So this is probably a pattern we're all kind of familiar with, maybe we can relate to even personally. So we have this pattern. Maybe as a result, we're depressed. Maybe we have adrenal issues. Maybe we have low energy. Maybe we have poor digestion. Maybe we have weight gain. We have all these symptoms. Go to the acupuncturist. They're going to be like, oh, your pulse is blah, 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 blah. I'm going to give you needles, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to give you these herbs, blah, 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 whatever. Yay! Going to go to the, psychiatrist because I'm depressed and have anxiety. They're going to be like, oh, you have this disorder and this disorder according to this disorder. And I'm going to give you these drugs. Okay, yeah, great. Then we're going to go to the alternative, spiritual healer. And they're going to be like, oh, you're just a highly evolved spiritual being. You're just so sensitive that, this low vibrational world just can't handle it. And you're just blah, 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 blah. But these crystals on your chakras, and they'll protect you, and say these mantras and invoke the blessings of this archangel, and everything will be better. You do all those things. Maybe they'll help a little bit, sure. There's nothing wrong with them. But let's actually look at, what is the real dynamic at play? What is actually going on with this person? What are all of these paradigms, which I could keep going and listing, going to different practitioners and what they would say and what they've diagnosed you with. But the whole point is pretty much everyone is missing the fucking point. No one is actually in touch with what the fuck is actually happening and why it's happening and what the real situation is. Thus, no treatment will actually be effective. So, say all these things to this person, not helpful. To be like, just open your heart, just be in your heart space, not helpful. What would be helpful is to say, hey, why the fuck are you so arrogant and stupid? What? How dare you say that? I'm so sensitive. Everyone takes advantage of me, and I just want to love everyone, and I don't know, people don't love me. Like, no, you're just fucking arrogant and you're stupid. How dare you say that? That's so mean. Okay, so what do I mean? Why am I being such a jerk? Well, basically we can say, why are you so arrogant and stupid to believe that somehow you're so great, or you're so important, or you're so unique, or you're so special that you have to play this, like, victim-martyr savior role for everyone? Like, you think you know so much better than reality, you think you know so much better than all these people that you have to be this thing because you think that life or these people won't actually provide for themselves. So by you agreeing to keep yourself stuck, you're keeping the other person stuck. That sounds a little bit violent. That sounds a little bit manipulative. That sounds a little bit arrogant to think that you're that important and that life is just that stupid. And perhaps what would be better off, rather than being just open your heart space, just self-love, might be to tell these people to fuck off. Might be able to get in touch with the fact that you're arrogant and you're stupid, and thus you're allowing yourself to be a fucking doormat, probably as a way to manipulate and control other people because you're afraid that no one will love you otherwise. And getting in touch with this actual dynamic of why you choose and love being the victim and the martyr. And at which point the person will probably react from a position of being a victim and a martyr. Like, I'm just trying to help you, I'm just trying to do all these things for you, and you say this to me? Well, how dare you? And I mean, I can pull up a handful of conversations just from my Facebook message feed which exactly illustrate this principle. I could keep going with examples. I can keep beating this fucking point into the ground. But this is really the major point that I've been trying to make in this long-winded video, is that the majority of the time, none of these things actually get us in touch with what the real dynamic is actually at play in our situation. Largely because people in the I think largely just because most humans don't really want to be in touch with actual reality. Because if you're actually in touch, then you're actually in touch and engaged, then you realize, oh wait, I can't really blame anyone. Like, fuck. Like, there's a whole other level of things which come into play. And there's a whole manner of bullshit which you can't really engage with then when that happens. And that's kind of all I'll say at that note, because we're just getting really long-winded in this video. I just wanted to use that example because it's a really, really common example, and it shows up so much. But basically, you could probably see how just cramming someone with drugs will never touch the actual real situation, because they're, you cram them full of drugs, you balance their chi, you do all these things, but it all goes right back to shit because they go right back to the situation which is causing the bullshit in the first place. So you're just kind of wasting your time and energy, which is kind of the irony of being a kind of a healer or being in the healing field, is because you realize that the vast majority of what you're doing and what you're striving to do is just enabling people's bad behavior, like most of the time. And I can tell you that's kind of somewhat true in my experience. Like, I write an article, right? I make a bunch of different points. What people walk away with is just what they already thought, when what they already thought was probably what I was tearing apart and knocking down, but they didn't see it because they're only seeking validation, or they just flip side and villainize me. Oh, you're so this, and this. And it's like, you didn't even read what I'm saying. Like, you don't even understand the logic or the point that I'm making. You're just reacting because you're not getting validation. It's kind of like when people like compliment you or elevate you. Oh, you're so good. You're so great. You're so special. Blah, 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 blah. 99% of the time, they're just telling you that so that you'll turn around and invalidate them. Meaning, like, okay, well, I'm going to make you look really good so that you can make me feel good about me being me. It's like all these crazy dynamics that we're all doing and not really even having any cognizance of. And it's kind of funny. That's why I made this video, and hopefully it sheds some light on anxiety, depression, and ADD, and realizing that pretty much the mass majority of the way that people understand these things is really incorrect, because it doesn't actually approach any approximation of what the real dynamic of reality is or is happening. Yeah. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoy this rant video thing and the high level of professionality and composure that it's contained. And I'll talk to you soon.